Now, the plant in nearby Amherstburg that bottles Crown Royal, an iconic Canadian whiskey with a storied history, is closing and shifting work to south of the border.
Diageo says that Crown Royal products destined for the domestic market and non-U.S. marketplaces will continue to be bottled
to south
in
of
Quebec.
the border.
They're hurting Ontario residents. They're hurting the people that work at Crown Royal.
Quebec. Yeah.
Hey, welcome back to my channel. Something unexpected just happened in Ontario, and it's shaking one of Canada's most iconic brands. Crown Royal, the whiskey many Canadians see as part of their national identity, has announced that its Amherstburg bottling plant will close in early 2026. Nearly 200 jobs could vanish overnight. The news spread like wildfire. Premier Doug Ford called for a boycott. Opposition leaders demanded the brand be pulled from LCBO shelves. Across the country, ordinary Canadians said it felt as though a national treasure had just been handed over to the United States. But here's the twist most headlines miss. Crown Royal isn't leaving Canada entirely. The grains, the water from Lake Winnipeg, the distilling and aging, all of that still happens here. What's moving south is only the final stage, the packaging. That raises a bigger question. Did Canada really lose its whiskey? Or just the right to decide how the story gets told? The reality is far more complicated than it first appeared. While news outlets focus on lost jobs and shifting production, the foundation of Crown Royal remains deeply rooted in Canada. The grains are still grown on Canadian soil. The water still comes from Lake Winnipeg. The whiskey continues to be mashed, distilled, and aged in Gimli, Manitoba, exactly as it has been since 1939. Even bottling hasn't completely disappeared. Facilities in Quebec continue to handle production for domestic and overseas markets, keeping a significant share of the process within Canadian borders. What's changing is simply where the final touch happens. The packaging step, the bottles, the labels, the boxes, is moving closer to American consumers. The spirit, the essence, the craftsmanship that define Crown Royal are still entirely Canadian. It creates a strange paradox. The United States might hold the label, but the soul of the whiskey remains north of the border. This tension leads to a broader question that goes beyond whiskey. In a globalized economy, what truly defines a product? Is it the physical location of the final step, or the cultural and material foundation from which it comes? For Canadians, this distinction matters deeply because whiskey is more than a beverage. It's a piece of heritage and pride, representing a tradition that has shaped communities and supported family for generations. Beneath this symbolic debate lies a harder economic truth. The move is not just about production, it's part of a deliberate global strategy. Diageo, Crown Royal's parent company, has been pursuing its Global Accelerate program, a cost-cutting initiative aimed at saving $625 million over 3 years. Shifting bottling closer to American consumers fits that plan perfectly, reducing transport distances and streamlining logistics across North America. From a corporate perspective, the decision makes sense. But for Ontario, the consequences feel like a blow. The province's spirits industry contributes more than $500 million to GDP every year and supports over 4,600 direct jobs. When a facility like Amherstburg closes, the ripple effect spreads far beyond the factory walls. Farmers who supply grain, trucking companies that transport goods, packaging suppliers, and logistics firms all feel the pressure. Even small disruptions in such an interconnected system can create economic shockwaves that stretch across regions and industries. Is this simply efficient supply chain management? Or is Ontario being left to bear the cost while profits and efficiency gains flow south? Looking at the bigger picture, whiskey is not just another export for Canada. It functions as a strategic asset in international trade. Ontario's spirits industry has long punched above its weight, with whiskey exports in 2018 alone reaching $441 million, more than the combined total of beer and wine exports. This underscores how central whiskey has become to Canada's economic and cultural profile abroad. The industry's contribution also extends directly to public finances. The LCBO, Ontario's Liquor Control Board, delivers roughly $1.2 billion in annual dividends to provincial government, much of it derived from spirits. When a brand as dominant as Crown Royal experiences change, it affects not just corporate balance sheets, but also public revenue streams that fund essential services to the United States. Crown Royal's influence is even greater. It accounts for an estimated 42% of Canadian whiskey sales south of the border, maintaining a commanding presence in a market where branding, tradition, and loyalty play a decisive role. Its prestige was reinforced in 2016 when Northern Harvest Rye was named World Whisky of the Year, highlighting Crown Royal's position as a global ambassador of Canadian craftsmanship. That's why even a seemingly minor shift in production carries weight far beyond Amherstburg. It touches on trade relations, national image, and the perception of Canadian quality worldwide. For many Canadians, it's not just about jobs. It's about ownership of a legacy. At the local level, the closure will leave deep marks. Distilleries purchase more than $30 million worth of grain from Ontario farmers every year, providing a steady and predictable market that helps stabilize rural incomes. When a key facility shuts down, those relationships can weaken, forcing farmers to compete in more volatile markets. The loss also threatens a web of support industries that depend on the plant. Industry analysts estimate that for every direct job in distillery or bottling plant, 4 to 5 more are supported in trucking, warehousing, equipment maintenance, and retail. By that measure, the shutdown of Amherstburg could translate into more than 7,000 job years lost over the next decade. These are not just numbers. They represent livelihoods, families, and communities that have grown around a shared sense of pride in producing something distinctly Canadian. Ultimately, the Crown Royal story reflects a tension between national identity and global efficiency. On paper, it's a rational corporate decision designed to save money and optimize logistics. But emotionally and economically, it cuts much deeper. Canadians are left asking whether efficiency should come to the cost of heritage, and whether a product can remain truly Canadian if the final piece of its journey is completed elsewhere. The whiskey will still flow from Lake Winnipeg. The barrels will still age in Manitoba. The taste, aroma, and tradition, all unmistakably Canadian. Yet something intangible feels altered. The bottle may now be filled and sealed across the border, but the pride behind it, the history poured into every drop, remains firmly rooted in Canada. In the end, what Crown Royal's move really exposes is a complex reality of globalization, a world where geography, identity, and economics constantly collide. And while Canada may not have lost its whiskey, it might just have lost a bit of control over how its story gets told. The burden from Amherstburg's closure will be felt not only by the workers themselves, but by the broader communities that rely on their spending power. In southwestern Ontario, the stakes are especially visible. Essex County alone has drawn around $116 million in GDP from the spirits industry, a figure that shows just how closely local prosperity is tied to whiskey production. When a facility shuts down in a region like this, the impact goes far beyond headlines. It appears in household incomes, in small businesses fighting to stay open, and in the daily rhythm of economic life. Yet within this disruption lies a potential for renewal. While the loss of Amherstburg is painful, it could also become a turning point, an opportunity for Canada to rethink its whiskey industry and reduce dependence on one multinational company. The disappearance of a single plant might encourage diversification, stronger homegrown brands, and new forms of resilience across the sector. Across the provinces, smaller distilleries are already stepping into that space. They're experimenting with cherry and port casks, blending regional grains, and creating distinct local flavors that push Canada's whiskey profile beyond the legacy of big names like Crown Royal. These craft producers, though modest in scale, appeal to a global market that increasingly values authenticity, origin, and variety over uniform mass market products. Their growth could mark a quiet transformation, one where Canadian whiskey becomes known not just for scale, but for character and creativity. The absence of a major bottling hub may also create openings for entrepreneurs. Packaging, logistics, and branding are all areas where new investment could fill the gap left behind, keeping more of the value chain inside Canada. With the right incentives and access to capital, local investors could turn the loss into a foundation for new industries, jobs in design, marketing, and export management that strengthen the whiskey ecosystem from within. Government policy could play a decisive role in that shift. Ontario, which depend heavily on LCBO revenues, has every reason to nurture startups and mid-sized producers. By supporting innovation and domestic ownership, the province could reframe whiskey not only as a piece of heritage, but as a sector of future growth. If this momentum takes hold, Amherstburg's closure might one day